Alien Princess couldn't walk for years, until her human mechanic said, "I'll help you." The space station Orrinal drifted quietly near a blue star, far from busy trade routes. It was not a place for visitors or celebrations. It was a place where things were stored, repaired, or forgotten. That was why the alien princess lived there. Princess Salira had not walked in 7 years. She remembered the day clearly, the sharp pain, the sudden loss of balance, the way her legs stopped responding, as if they no longer belonged to her. Doctors from her world tried everything they knew. Advanced machines scanned her body again and again. Healers spoke softly and avoided her eyes. In the end, they said the same words in different ways. It cannot be fixed. She was still alive, still royal, still intelligent. But to her people, a princess who could not stand was a symbol of weakness. Quietly, without anger or ceremony, she was sent away from the capital, not as a punishment but as a convenience. Orrinal Station became her home. Every day followed the same pattern. The lights brightened slowly. Servants helped her into her gravity chair. Screens displayed messages from the royal court, carefully written and empty of meaning. She watched ships arrive and leave through wide windows, wondering how it felt to walk toward something again instead of being carried to it. Some aliens pitied her. Some avoided her. A few pretended she did not exist. She had learned not to hope. The human mechanic arrived on Orrinal without announcement. His name was Jonah Hale. He was contracted to repair old systems the station could not afford to replace: gravity stabilizers, cargo lifts, energy rails, the kind of work that mattered only when it failed. Jonah was not special. He had no rank, no influence, and no interest in royal matters. He worked quietly, sleeves rolled up, hands always marked with grease and scratches. Humans were common in service jobs across the galaxy. They fixed what others abandoned. On his third day, Jonah was assigned to repair a malfunctioning platform near the residential wing. As he tested the controls, he noticed movement nearby. A sleek gravity chair hovered forward, guided by soft energy fields. Sitting in it was a tall alien woman with pale skin that reflected light like pearl glass. Her eyes were sharp but tired. Jonah did not bow. He did not stare. He just looked at the chair. "That thing seems off balance," he said calmly. Salira blinked. No one spoke to her like that, not without fear, not without careful words. "It is not broken," she replied. "I am." Jonah frowned slightly, then shook his head. "Machines don't care who sits in them. If it moves wrong, something's wrong." She watched him step closer, kneeling to examine the gravity emitters. He did not ask who she was. He did not ask what happened. He focused only on the problem in front of him. After a moment, he looked up. "May I?" She hesitated, then nodded. He adjusted a few settings, lowered the gravity field by a small amount, and stepped back. The chair steadied. Salira felt it immediately. The pressure on her body changed, subtle but real. "That feels different," she said quietly. Jonah shrugged. "Sometimes systems drift over time. No one checks them unless they break completely." She almost laughed. Almost. Over the next few days, Jonah kept returning, sometimes officially, sometimes not. He asked questions about the station's gravity layout, about her chair, about how her body reacted to different force levels. He never asked about her injury. One day, as she watched him work, she finally asked, "Why are you helping me?" He paused, wiping his hands on a cloth. "You looked like you needed help." "That is not enough," she said. "It is for me." Salira did not know what to do with that answer. Jonah began making small changes. He adjusted the gravity in one corridor to be slightly lighter. He modified a support rail along the wall. He added a simple harness that could support weight without locking her in place. None of it was advanced alien technology. It was simple, practical, human. When he finally spoke the words, he said them without drama. "I think you can stand," he said. "Not walk, not yet. Just stand." Fear rushed through her chest. "They tried," she said. "The best minds tried." He nodded. They tried to fix you. I'm not doing that. I'm working with what you have. She did not trust Hope anymore, but something in his voice was steady, not confident, just honest. The first attempt was painful. With the harness supporting her, Jonah slowly reduced the chair's gravity field. Celira's legs trembled violently. Pain shot through her muscles. She gasped, gripping the rail. "I can't," she whispered. "You can stop any time," Jonah said. "This isn't about proving anything." She closed her eyes. Memories flooded in. Running as a child, standing beside her mother during ceremonies, the moment she fell. "I'll try," she said. They counted together. 1, 2, 3. Her feet touched the floor. For a moment nothing happened. Then her legs buckled and Jonah caught her before she fell. She was shaking, not just from pain but from shock. "I stood," she said, almost confused. Jonah smiled softly. "Yeah, you did." Words spread quickly. Servants whispered. Guards watched with suspicion. A message arrived from the royal court asking for explanations. Celira was terrified. If this failed, she would be mocked. If it succeeded, she would be feared. Jonah did not care about any of that. The next session she stood longer, 10 seconds. Then 15. Each time hurt. Each time scared her. Each time made her feel alive again. One day a group of station officials arrived to observe. They stood at a distance, arms crossed, ready to declare it dangerous. Celira felt their eyes on her as Jonah adjusted the settings. Her legs shook harder than before. "Too much pressure," an official said. "Stop this." Celira looked at Jonah. For the first time she saw uncertainty in his eyes, not doubt in her but concern for her choice. "Do you want to stop?" he asked. She thought of the chair, the quiet rooms, the years of waiting. "No," she said. "I want to try." He nodded. Slowly, carefully, she rose again. This time she did not fall. Her legs trembled violently. Sweat formed along her temples. Pain burned through her body, but she stayed upright. Silence filled the chamber. Celira stood on her own feet for a full 20 seconds. Then she collapsed back into the chair, exhausted, tears streaming down her face. She was not crying from pain. She was crying because for the first time in years, the future felt open again. Jonah stepped back, giving her space. "That's enough for today." She looked at him through blurred vision. "Why are humans like this?" she asked softly. He blinked. "Like what?" "Helping without permission, without reward." He thought for a moment. "Maybe because we're used to being told something can't be done." As Jonah walked away to clean his tools, Celira watched him with a new understanding. He had not fixed her. He had reminded her how to stand. And that changed everything. "If you want, next I can." Write Part 2, 1,400 words. With stronger emotional payoff, make it more HFY style, add court drama, plus final walking moment. Just tell me the days after Celira first stood did not become easier. In some ways, they became harder. Her body remembered pain more clearly than strength. Each morning when the lights of Ornal Station slowly brightened, her legs ached before she even tried to move. Muscles burned. Joints felt stiff and heavy. Some days fear pressed down on her chest so hard she wanted to stay in the gravity chair and pretend none of it had happened. But Jonah returned every day. He never pushed, never raised his voice, never told her what she should be. He simply asked the same question. "Do you want to try today?" Some days she said yes immediately. Other days she waited, staring at the floor, listening to the quiet hum of the station. And every time she said yes, he nodded like it was the most normal thing in the universe. As Celira trained, messages from the royal court became more frequent. Officials requested reports. Advisors warned her not to embarrass the crown. A physician sent a formal statement saying continued attempts could cause permanent damage. She read them all. Then she turned the screen off. When she stood now, she did it longer. 30 seconds, 40, a full minute. She learned how to shift her weight, how to breathe through the pain, how to fall safely when her legs failed her. Jonah changed the environment instead of forcing her body to change. He adjusted gravity levels by small amounts. He built simple walking frames that could be removed easily. He replaced rigid supports with flexible ones that allowed mistakes. "This isn't about perfect balance," he told her once. "It's about learning how to recover when things go wrong." Those words stayed with her. Not everyone approved. One afternoon, a delegation from the royal system arrived at Ornal Station. Their robes were sharp, their voices polite but cold. They watched silently as Celira practiced standing with only a light support rail. When she finished, breathing hard, one of them spoke. "This is reckless," the official said. "Your condition was declared permanent." Celira straightened in her chair. "Declared by whom?" "By the best minds of our people." Jonah wiped his hands slowly. "No offense," he said, "but sometimes best just means used to doing things one way." The officials looked offended. One turned to Celira. "If this fails publicly, it will reflect poorly on the crown." Celira met their gaze. "Then let it." After they left, silence hung heavy in the room. "Sorry," Jonah said quietly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." She shook her head. "You didn't, you revealed it." That night Celira could not sleep. Doubt returned, stronger than before. What if she fell in front of everyone? What if her legs gave out completely? What if hope made everything worse? She considered sending Jonah away, ending this before it became something she could lose. The next morning, Jonah arrived as usual. "Do you want to try today?" he asked. She looked at him for a long time, then she said, "Yes, but I want to walk." He did not smile, he did not celebrate, he only nodded. "Okay," he said, "one step." The first step did not happen that day, nor the next. Her legs refused to move forward. Standing was one thing, walking demanded trust. Every time she lifted one foot, fear took over and her body locked. She fell twice, once hard enough to bruise her shoulder. "I'm wasting your time," she said bitterly, sitting on the floor. Jonah crouched beside her. "No," he said, "you're learning where the limit is, that matters." "But what if this is it?" she asked. "What if standing is all I get?" "Then standing is still something," he replied. But we don't decide the ending before the story finishes. A public demonstration was announced anyway. The court wanted proof, supporters wanted hope, critics wanted failure. The chamber filled with observers from many worlds. Cameras hovered silently. The gravity was set carefully, balanced between safety and challenge. Celira sat in her chair at the center of the room, heart racing. Jonah knelt beside her. "Remember," he said softly, "this isn't for them." She nodded. With slow control, she rose to her feet. The room went silent. She stood longer than ever before. Her legs shook violently, but she stayed upright. Then she lifted her foot. Pain flared. Fear screamed at her to stop. Her vision blurred. She fell. Gasps filled the chamber. Before anyone could speak, Jonah raised a hand. "She's fine," he said. Celira lay on the floor, breathing hard, tears burning her eyes. Shame washed over her, but Jonah did not help her up. "Take your time," he said. She pressed her hands to the floor. Slowly, painfully, she pushed herself up. The room watched in stunned silence as she stood again. And then, with everything she had, she took one step forward, then another. The chamber erupted in noise. Some shouted, some cried, some stood frozen in disbelief. Celira walked only 5 steps before collapsing into Jonah's arms. He steadied her gently and helped her sit. She was smiling through tears. In that moment, she was not a symbol, not a broken princess, not a miracle. She was someone who had moved forward on her own. The days that followed changed Ornal Station forever. Requests arrived from across the galaxy asking about the human mechanic and his methods. Jonah refused most interviews. He wrote simple reports instead, sharing designs freely. "It's not mine to own," he said. "Anyone can help someone stand." Celira continued training. Walking became steadier, stronger. Some days she still used the chair. Some days she didn't. No one forced her either way. When the royal court finally invited her back, it was different this time. There was no pity in their voices, no careful distance. She returned not as a restored princess, but as herself. During the ceremony, she walked across the hall slowly, unaided, not perfectly, not gracefully, but proudly. When it was over, she found Jonah standing near the exit, already packing his tools. "You're leaving," she said. "Contract S done," he replied. She hesitated. "You changed my life." He shook his head. "You did that," she smiled. "Still, thank you," he met her eyes. "Just keep going." As Jonah walked away, Salira stood on her own 2 feet and watched him disappear into the crowd. She did not chase him. She didn't need to. She had learned how to stand and how to walk forward. The return to the capital world was not the ending Salira expected. The palace halls were the same as before, tall pillars, shining floors, banners hanging from the ceiling. But the feeling inside them had changed. Before, she had moved through these halls as a memory. Now every step echoed. She walked slowly, carefully, not because she was weak, but because she chose to feel each step. Courtiers watched from a distance. Some smiled with honest pride. Others whispered behind their hands. A few looked uncomfortable, as if her presence forced them to remember how easily they had sent her away. Salira noticed everything. The throne council requested her presence almost immediately. They sat in a wide circle, faces calm, voices polite. They spoke of her recovery, of the human-assisted rehabilitation, of how her story had inspired many. Then they spoke of limits. "You must understand," one elder said gently, "your condition may return." "It may," Salira replied. "And walking unaided for long periods may not be wise." Agreed. They waited for her to lower her eyes, to accept guidance, to let them decide what she should be. She did not. "I will walk when I choose," she said. "I will rest when I need. I will not be hidden again." Silence followed. At last the eldest counselor nodded. "Then we must change how we govern." Change did not come easily. Across the planet, reactions were mixed. Some citizens celebrated her return. Others questioned whether a princess who once could not stand should lead at all. Old fears surfaced. Old beliefs resisted. Salira listened to all of it. Instead of retreating, she went out among the people. She visited hospitals where those with injuries lived quietly, forgotten like she once was. She spoke to them without ceremony, sometimes sitting, sometimes standing, sometimes leaning on a rail when her legs trembled. "I am not healed," she told them honestly. "I am learning." That truth mattered. Slowly, stories began to change. Jonah Hale did not stay on the capital world. He moved from station to station, doing the same work he always had, fixing old systems, helping when asked, teaching when people listened. But his name traveled faster than he did. Some called him a genius, some called him reckless. Some tried to hire him exclusively. He refused. "I'm just a mechanic," he said every time. On one small station near the edge of known space, Jonah found something familiar. A young alien worker sat in a broken mobility frame, watching others pass by. Jonah knelt beside the machine. "That thing looks uncomfortable," he said. Hope flickered again, somewhere new. Back on the capital world, Salira faced her hardest test yet. The Grand Assembly was called. Leaders from allied worlds gathered to discuss trade, defense, and shared technology. For the first time in years, Salira was asked to address them in person. The hall was vast. The walk to the center felt endless. She stood behind the podium, hands steady, legs burning. "I will not pretend strength where there is none," she began, "and I will not accept weakness where there is choice." She spoke of being sent away, of silence, of the danger of deciding someone's limits for them. She spoke of a human mechanic who did not see a broken princess, only a problem worth trying to solve. "I stand here," she said, voice clear, "not because I walk perfectly, but because I refuse to stay still." The hall was quiet when she finished. Then applause rose. Slow at first, then powerful. After the assembly, an advisor approached her. "You could change laws," they said, "fund programs, lead reforms." Salira smiled faintly. "I already have." She established open access workshops across her world. places where engineers, healers, and ordinary citizens could work together without rank or permission. Human designs were shared freely. Alien knowledge flowed back just as openly. Progress followed. Not miracles, not instant cures, but movement. Some days Celira woke with sharp pain in her legs. On those days she used her chair. She no longer felt ashamed of it. Strength, she learned, was knowing when to stand and when to rest. One evening, as she watched the sunset from a balcony, a familiar message arrived. Jonah Hale requested a short visit. She laughed softly and approved it at once. When Jonah arrived, he looked the same as always. Work clothes, tool case, slightly awkward posture. "You look busy," he said. "I am," she replied, "but I walk more now." They stood side by side, watching the sky change colors. "They're naming programs after you," she said. He groaned. "Please tell me you didn't let them name anything after me." "I didn't," she said. "I named them after movement." He nodded, relieved. They walked together through the gardens, slowly, quietly. No guards nearby, no cameras. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Helping me?" He thought for a moment. "No, but I'm glad you didn't make it about me." She stopped walking and turned to him. "You gave me something important." "You already had it," he said. She accepted that. When Jonah left again, it felt different from before. Not like loss, more like a chapter closing properly. Years passed. Celira became known not as the princess who could not walk, but as the leader who changed how her people saw ability. Systems evolved. Children with injuries grew up seeing leaders who rested openly, who adapted, who stood when they could. And Jonah Hale's design spread quietly, improved by others, reshaped by cultures he never met. One day, a young student asked Celira during a public forum, "What is the most important lesson you learned?" She did not answer immediately. Then she said, "Never let someone else decide what your body means." The crowd listened. Later that night, Celira stood alone in the same hall where she had once fallen. She walked its length slowly, carefully, proudly, and when her legs grew tired, she sat without shame. She had learned the truth that changed everything. Standing was never the goal. Choosing to move forward was. Time did not stop being difficult just because the world changed. Celira learned that slowly over years. Some mornings, she woke with strength in her legs and walked the palace halls without support. Other mornings, pain made every step feel heavy, and she used her chair without apology. The difference now was not in her body, but in her mind. She no longer measured her worth by how far she could walk. As leader, she made that lesson visible. Meetings were designed with flexible spaces. Platforms adjusted height and gravity automatically. Chairs and support rails were part of the room, not hidden away. When others questioned the cost, Celira answered simply, "If leadership requires pretending to be perfect, then the system is broken." Her people listened. Not all at once, not without resistance, but slowly traditions bent instead of breaking. Across the capital world, workshops grew into centers of learning. Humans worked beside aliens. Engineers shared tables with healers. Children were taught that adapting was not failure but intelligence. Celira visited often. She walked among them when she could. When she couldn't, she arrived seated and spoke just as confidently. Young ones watched her closely. They did not see weakness. They saw honesty. Jonah Hale never returned to stay, but his presence never fully left. His designs were taught in training programs, not under his name but under a simple principle: assist, don't control. Support, don't replace. Let the person lead. Celira insisted on that. Help should never trap someone, she said during one council session. It should free them. Years later, the galaxy faced a quiet crisis. Trade routes shifted. Old stations failed. Systems designed for perfection collapsed under pressure. Worlds began sending requests for assistance, not for weapons or power, but for knowledge. They asked how Celira's world had adapted so quickly. She answered with open channels. "We stopped designing for the strongest," she told them. "We designed for the real." Delegations arrived from distant systems. They toured the workshops. They spoke with citizens. They met leaders who leaned on rails during long discussions and rested without shame. Many left changed. One visitor, a rigid military commander, watched Celira pause mid-walk, sit, then continue speaking without interruption. Later he asked quietly, "Does it not undermine authority?" Celira smiled gently. "Only if authority depends on pretending." The commander returned home thoughtful. Change rippled outward. Years passed. Celira's hair showed streaks of silver. Her steps grew slower but steadier. She had learned her body well. She knew when to push and when to stop. That knowledge was her strength. On the anniversary of her return, a public gathering was held in the Great Hall, not a celebration, a reflection. Citizens shared stories. A worker who stood after years of injury. A child who grew up seeing leaders rest openly. An engineer who learned that simple solutions could change lives. When Celira finally spoke, her voice was calm. "I was once sent away because I did not fit the image of leadership," she said. "But leadership is not an image, it is a relationship." She paused, resting one hand on the rail beside her. "If my story taught anything," she continued, "it is this: no body is broken for needing support." The hall remained silent long after she finished. That night, alone in her chambers, Celira received an unexpected message. It was short, a simple text from a familiar address. "Passing through nearby, hope you're well." Jay, she laughed softly. They met the next day in a quiet garden outside the city. Jonah looked older too, lines at the corners of his eyes, a slower pace. "You walk differently now," he observed. "So do you," she replied. They sat together, watching leaves move gently in the adjusted breeze. "I heard what you built," Jonah said. "It spread farther than I thought." "It spread because you let it," she answered. "You never tried to own it." He shrugged. "Didn't feel right." They talked about small things, stations he'd repaired, worlds she'd visited, people they'd helped directly or indirectly. At one point, Celira stood and walked a few steps on her own. Then she stopped, breathed, and sat again. Jonah watched without comment. "Thank you," she said after a while. He looked surprised. "For what?" "For trusting me to decide when to stop." He nodded slowly. "That was always your call." When he left again, Celira felt no sadness, only peace. In the final years of her leadership, Celira focused less on policy and more on teaching. She spoke to future leaders about listening to their bodies and their people, about leaving room for weakness without fear, about choosing progress over pride. When it was time to step down, she did so openly. No ceremony of loss, only transition. Her successor stood beside her, young and confident, using a support frame openly during the address. The crowd did not react. That was the victory. Later, Celira walked one last time through the palace hall where she had once fallen years ago. Her steps were slow, her breathing steady. Halfway across, she chose to sit. She rested there, smiling, remembering the first moment she stood again on Orinal Station. The fear, the pain, the choice. She did not need to reach the end of the hall, she had already gone far enough. Outside, the world continued to move. Systems adapted. People helped one another stand, sit, rest, and rise again. Somewhere, Jonah Hale fixed another broken platform, speaking calmly to someone who thought they could not move forward. And across the galaxy, Celira's true legacy lived on, not in how far she walked, but in how